Good day, spiritual artists. This is CJ Miller, the host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast. I wanted to do something special here and give you kind of a bonus doodling day. I actually have an interview in the pike. I need to edit it, but I wanted to share something with you. I do read motivational things every morning, something motivational, and I kind of got into this wonderful habit with you as I read from my book. And so I wanted to share an idea for you of someone else that I read. I read Pema Chodrin, and I'm going to read to you a chapter from her book called The Places That Scare You, A Guide to Fearlessness. That's by Pema Chodrin. Let's talk about chapter 22 in her book. I'm going to read it to you and give you an extra doodling day if you want to do that to remember by while I prepare this next podcast for you. So, chapter 22 of her book, The Places That Scare You, is titled The In-Between State. Quote, "The secret of Zen is just two words, not always so." Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. It takes some time to equate complete letting go with comfort. But in fact, nothing to hold on to is the root of happiness. There's a sense of freedom when we accept that we're not in control. Pointing ourselves towards what we would most like to avoid makes our barriers and shields permeable. This may lead to a don't know what to do kind of feeling, a sense of being caught in between. On the one hand, we're completely fed up with seeking comfort from what we can eat, drink, smoke, or couple with. We're also fed up with beliefs, ideas, and isms of all kinds. But on the other hand, we wish it were true that outer comfort could bring lasting happiness. This in-between state is where the warrior spends a lot of time growing up. We'd give anything to have the comfort we used to get from eating a pizza or watching a video. However, even those things can be pleasurable. We've seen that eating a pizza or watching a video is a feeble match for our suffering. We notice this especially when things are falling apart. We notice this especially when things are falling apart. If we've just learned that we have cancer, eating a pizza doesn't do much to cheer us up. If someone we love has just died or walked out, the outer places we go for comfort feel feeble and ephemeral. We are told about the pain of chasing after pleasures and the futility of running from pain. We hear also about the joy of awakening, of realizing our interconnectedness, of trusting the openness of our hearts and minds. But we aren't told all that much about this state of being in between, no longer able to get our old comfort from the outside, but not yet dwelling in a continual sense of equanimity and warmth. Anxiety, heartbreak, and tenderness mark the in-between state. It's the kind of place we usually want to avoid. The challenge is to stay in the middle rather than buy into struggle and complaint. The challenge is to let it soften us rather than make us more rigid and afraid. I'm going to read that again. The challenge is to stay in the middle rather than buy into struggle and complaint. The challenge is to let it soften us rather than make us more rigid and afraid. Becoming intimate with the queasy feeling of being in the middle of nowhere only makes our hearts more tender. When we are brave enough to stay in the middle, compassion arises spontaneously. By not knowing, not hoping to know, and not acting like we know what's happening, we begin to access our inner strength. Yet it seems reasonable to want some kind of relief. If we can make the situation right or wrong, if we can pin it down in any way, then we are on familiar ground. But something has shaken up our habitual patterns, and frequently they no longer work. Staying with volatile energy gradually becomes more comfortable than acting it out or repressing it. This open-ended tender place is called bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. Staying with it is what heals. It allows us to let go of our self-importance. It's how the warrior learns to love. This is exactly how we're training every time we sit in meditation. We see what comes up, acknowledge that with kindness, and let go. Thoughts and emotions rise and fall. Some are more convincing than others. Habitually, we are so uncomfortable with that churned up feeling that we do anything to make it go away. Instead, we kindly encourage ourselves to stay with our agitated energy by returning to the breath. This is a basic training in Maitri that we need to just keep going forward to keep opening our hearts. Dwelling in the in-between state requires learning to contain the paradox of some things being both right and wrong, of someone's being strong and loving, and also angry, uptight, and stingy. In that painful moment when we don't live up to our own standards, do we condemn ourselves or truly appreciate the paradox of being human? Can we forgive ourselves and stay in touch with our good and tender heart? When someone pushes our buttons, do we set out to make the person wrong? Or do we repress our reaction with, I'm supposed to be loving? How could I hold this negative thought? Our practice is to stay with the uneasiness and not solidify into a view. We can meditate, do Tonglen, or simply look at the open sky, anything that encourages us to stay on the brink and not solidify into a view. When we find ourselves in a place of discomfort and fear, when we're in a dispute, when the doctor says we need tests to see what's wrong, we'll find that we want to blame, to take sides, to stand our ground. We feel we must have some resolution. We want to hold our familiar view. For the warrior, right is as extreme a view as wrong. They both block our innate wisdom. I'm going to read that again. For the warrior, right is as extreme a view as wrong. They both block our innate wisdom. When we stand at the crossroads, not knowing which way to go, we abide in prajna paramiti. The crossroads is an important place in the training of a warrior. It's where our solid views begin to dissolve. Holding the paradox is not something any of us will suddenly be able to do. That's why we're encouraged to spend our whole lives training with uncertainty, ambiguity, and security. To stay in the middle prepares us to meet the unknown without fear. It prepares us to face both our life and our death, the in-between state, where moment by moment the warrior finds himself learning to let go is the perfect training ground. It really doesn't matter if we feel depressed about that or inspired. There's absolutely no way to do this just right. That's why compassion and Maitri, along with courage, are vital. They give us the resources to be genuine about where we are, but at the same time to know that we are always in transition, that the only time is now, and that the future is completely unpredictable and open. As we continue to train, we evolve beyond the little me, who continually seeks zones of comfort. We gradually discover that we are big enough to hold something that is neither a lie nor truth, neither pure nor impure, neither good nor bad. But first, we have to appreciate the richness of the groundless state and hang in there. It's important to hear about this in-between state. Otherwise, we think the warrior's journey is one way or the other. Either we're all caught up or we're free. The fact is that we spend a long time in the middle. The juicy spot is a fruitful place to be, resting here completely, steadfastly experiencing the clarity of the present moment is called enlightenment. Folks, I love this chapter and I've resonated on it and reread it over and over again these last few weeks. And I'll tell you why I wanted to share it with you. I tried a new medication for psoriasis. I have a skin issue called psoriasis, and I've been on a new medication now for 5 weeks. And slowly it's affecting me. Slowly it's making me lack energy and I'm more tired and I don't have the energy to even get out of bed sometimes. It's really rough. And so I finally called my dermatologist and he's going to take me off the medication and we're going to try something else. But the point being that I've realized that we are often in that space, aren't we? We're often dealing with an illness or the loss of someone or politics or the media, and we have to just stay in that in-between state. And so I love how Pema talks about that. It reminds me of my chapter called The Rule of Medium. When you stay in that in-between state as an artist, it's when you let the painting unfurl on its own. But we also stay in that in-between state as a human. We are human beings. We are human beings. I love the fact that Pema talks about this place of unknowing. And, as I struggled with this medication over the last few weeks, I had to just hold still without judging whether it was right or wrong, good or bad. Give it time to see where it goes. It's like you do with a painting. You let go of your controlling to force it to the end and let it unfurl naturally. In time, I made the connection that the energy loss from this medication was just too much to warrant any salvation or any healing from it. And so oftentimes when we're in that in-between place, it's a place of really not seeing an end, but relaxing into it, feeling that spiritual connection. And what I really love about what she said in here is we are training to be in that space. As we get older and when we're young, we see things in right and wrong, and we try to force life to follow those rules. But as we get older, we start realizing that not everything falls into a category of right or wrong. It's not easy to put things in a category. And so I love how she talks about just let this challenge, here she says, the challenge is to let it soften us rather than make us more rigid and afraid. Isn't that wonderful? The challenge is to just let yourself be in that space. Have empathy for the things around you, the people around you, the situation around you. Most importantly, have empathy for yourself and whatever you're dealing with. I'll say that again. Most importantly, have empathy for yourself and what you're dealing with. So that's why I wanted to share this chapter with you. The parallel with my rule of medium, the fact that we have to live in that in-between place. And sometimes it's a matter of just being there and letting it soften us and connect us with others. I hope you enjoyed me reading this. I'm debating where to go from here after the Doodle Pool Club. I love reading. I love the spiritual practice. I love sharing ideas with you. I'm not sure if I should be doing more of this, sharing my resources, what I read for inspiration with you as an artist, or more podcast interviews with other artists, or more podcast interviews with spiritual leaders. Anyway, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. I hope you enjoy this July 4th weekend. And then next week, I will announce and release my next interview. It's very exciting. So I will talk to you soon, and have a great day.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.